even in the worship, I was talking about that the Jews and Gentiles can now worship together. If you remember in the book of Acts, chapter 10, where Peter took the gospel, and actually if you turn there in Acts chapter 10, verse 44, Peter took the gospel to the Gentiles. He was the first missionary to the Gentiles. He went to a man named Cornelius' home in chapter 10, verse 24. Acts 10, verse 44, we'll begin to read. When Peter saw these words, the Holy Spirit, while Peter was still speaking these words. So Peter is at Cornelius' house. Cornelius is a Gentile. He's a Roman centurion. He sent for Peter to come to his house under the direction of the Holy Spirit. And Peter is now in his house. Jews were not allowed to enter the homes of Gentiles. They were not allowed to enter the homes of Gentiles. And so he goes into his home. He preaches the gospel. The Holy Spirit falls on these Gentiles like they did in Acts chapter 2 on the Jewish believers. And here's what Peter surmises. While Peter was speaking these words, the Holy Spirit fell upon all those who heard the word. And those of the circumcision, those of the Jews who believed, were astonished, as many as came with Peter, because the gift of the Holy Spirit had been poured out on the Gentiles also, for they heard them speak with tongues and magnify God. Then Peter answered, can anyone forbid water that these should not be baptized who have received the Holy Spirit, just as we have? And he commanded them to be baptized in the name of the Lord. Then they asked him to stay a few days. And so here's what the first coming of the Holy Spirit on the Gentiles. And they're not in Jerusalem. They're not in Israel. They're just outside. And he goes and he preaches to them. And they get saved and the Holy Spirit falls on them. And they begin to prophesy and speak in tongues just like they did on the day of Pentecost. And the Jewish brothers are astonished because the Jews didn't think that salvation could come to the Gentiles, but it did. Now, there's a portion or a period of history that's called the time of the Gentiles. You and I are Gentiles. I was watching a video this week of a man from India, and he said that he is a Christian today because of the Apostle Thomas, who we call Doubting Thomas. In AD 70, when the Romans ransacked the city of Jerusalem, Thomas ran for his life, and in running for his life, he ended up living in India. And he became a missionary there and shared the gospel. And the man says, I'm a saved person today because of what Thomas did almost 2,000 years ago. People became Christians and they got saved, and generation after generation and got saved, and and I'm one of those people. And he knows the history of Thomas living in India. And this is what happened. Jewish missionaries, Thomas was a Jewish missionary, went to the Gentiles and shared with them the gospel. Philip was a Jewish missionary in Acts chapter 8, shared the gospel with the Ethiopian eunuch. And those of us, we have friends here that attend some of our services that can talk about the history of the Gentile church and Christianity in Northern Africa, in Ethiopia, because the gospel was exported from the Jews to the Gentiles. And we have the gospel today.